Hello and welcome to yet another episode of AR Chat. We're all looking forward to this episode today. I'm joined as always by my co-hosts Crystal Golightly and Nathan Herman, and an episode I've been looking forward to recording for a while with the ever fabulous Sonya Vargas from Databricks. Hey Sonya.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this and listening and watching your other shows. So I'm super pumped to be here.
We've had sort of 10 minutes of goofing around before we fit record. So we're all super pumped and ready to get started. So, Crystal, we always go to you first. You always ask the question that gets us going here. So dive straight in.
Do that. Sonia, please
Yeah.
introduce yourself because we all know you. And
Yeah,
I'm
we're just
sure
goofing around
anyone who
like
doesn't-
everybody knows Sonya.
Like, no, exactly. Like, who doesn't know Sonia? But for those that may not know you, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself and share a little bit about your AR journey.
Yeah, you got it. Again, thank you so much for having me join you guys. This is such a fun way to kick off my Friday. And I don't know when this is going to air, but it is Friday for us right now live. So it's really fun. So I've been in AR for about 17 years at this point, and I started on the agency side. So I was at Edelman for about 8 years, and I really feel like that's such a good boot camp. And at Edelman, I started right away in AR, which was also unique because the AR team was very small, very specialized. And at that time, the clients or most of the vendors who had AR teams were the big companies. So Adobe, HP, Citrix. So those were the companies that I got to support. And it was what a great way to learn how to do AR in the best way possible, but by being part of those, great AR teams who continue to be amazing. But it was just, I still see those people as mentors and kind of role models and getting me started and showing me what a successful AR program looks like. So from there, I went to Anaplan. And I was there for about 4 years. Started when it was private, about 600 employees. I was there for about 4 years, went public. That was really fun going through the IPO from an analyst relations perspective. We had doubled in size in terms of employees and revenue, and it was about 1,200 employees. And I was like, wow, what a rocket ship. And then I went to Databricks and I was like,
From a small rocket ship to a big rocket ship.
Exactly. And I was like, oh, okay. So this is from another planet type of rocket ship, right? So, and I've been here for about 5.5 years now, and it's been
That long?
it's been that long. Can you believe it? And in Databricks years, I mean, I'm literally a veteran because we have this thing where it shows tenure in terms of how long you've been on our internal database. And I'm like 96% or something because there's so many new people. And Steven, you were mentioning this when we were warming up before recording, but when I joined, we were around 1,000 employees. Now we're over 8,000. And, this is during, a pandemic, during crazy economy, like all these things that were happening when there were so many layoffs, and Databricks just continues, to hire people and invest in R&D and in talent. And I think partially, I know everyone's like, ooh, how does pre-IPO? When are you guys going to IPO? Like every year is like, ooh, is this Databricks' year to go public?
It'd be the first company that does a Series Z raise. Is that the objective? You're just going through all the letters?
If we wanted to, we probably could, because in every case,
is it J now?
yeah, I've lost count of the alphabet.
You guys are kind of halfway through the alphabet, but I joke, but Sonya, we met when I came out to your analyst event, which is the first one post-COVID. And I remember having this conversation. We talked about it off camera vividly with you. It was the first time that so many Databricks people had met each other. And I think you talked about the growth. I think you said at the time it was 4,000 people. And what was that, like 3 years ago, I think? We've got a guest appearance coming in. I love it. But no, that was kind of 3 years ago, I think. So I remember everybody being so sort of pumped and psyched to meet each other kind of for the first time because the company had grown so massively.
Absolutely.
Kind of joke about the growth, and we'll get into it because that's what the really interesting thing is for me about Databricks and kind of the program that I know you've built over there. So we'll get into that eventually.
Okay, so Sonia, it's kind of a nice time to say, since you've been around for 17 years, longer than me, who do you think the first AR person was, or the first program?
So I have a theory, but it was funny because I was thinking about this. I know you asked this question, every time at the beginning, and I was like, And I was thinking, I said, yeah, chicken or the egg kind of situation. And then I watched Brandon's episode yesterday and I was like, he stole my line, chicken or the egg. I was like, everyone's talking about chicken or the egg, So the way I picture it going down, and obviously this is just, in my imagination. And I think you guys talked a little bit about where the name analysts came from and why are they analysts? And there's so many other analysts, out there, different types of analysts. Hi.
In case, I'm so sorry, but
We've got trucks and
Great.
everything.
Lightning McQueen. It's important.
Yes. I know.
We've got elephants,
Okay.
we've got milk, we've got a truck. It's complete, I think.
Right. Okay, sweetheart. Have a great day at school, okay?
It's a family show and we love it. We embrace it whenever your boy comes in, Krista.
Generation of
And
analysts.
he's much more chatty now than from when he first started.
He's a pro. He can join one of our chats soon.
It might be a lot about T-Rexes and cars and snacks.
Analyst covering that market, Crystal. So as for his
All right. I'm so sorry. Totally got you off track.
No. So the way I picture it going down is all these new vendors popping up in whatever tech area. And then someone says, well, how are all of our customers going to make decisions, right? Like, how are they going to choose who the best one is? I'm going to start analyzing the space, hence analysts. And then they say, I'm going to analyze it. And then a salesperson stumbles across a customer who says, well, this analyst told me that your competitor is better than you. And then the salesperson is like, what is that? And then they bring it back to the organization, say, well, customers are talking to these so-called analysts. Who's going to talk to them here and influence them? And I imagine that a very kind souled product marketer probably raised her hand and said, let me see what we can do there. And that's kind of how the ball started rolling. So that's my theory.
You trace back kind of the tech. There was very few companies back when computing started. We talk about the seven dwarfs that kind of grew up around the mainframe space when the computing sort of start the Burrows of this world and the Amdals and those types of guys. I think there's a lot in your theory there because that would have been the first time that there was a choice in history. And you look at technology, if you wanted a computer, you bought one from IBM, you bought the software from IBM. We've all seen the movie Hidden Figures. That was the computer, you bought it from one place. There really wasn't choice until those seven companies came along and tried to copy the model.
I think
So
you're-
yeah, that
And
makes sense.
I do a little name drop. So remember we had Beth Torrey a couple weeks ago. She has the AR Learning Curve, which is like an AR training on demand. And she just posted a really great post yesterday because someone was working with Sequoia Capital and they were talking about the power of analysts and analyst relations. And it felt like it was really parallel to what you were describing, Sonya, right? Because they were like, oh my gosh, this was like a product marketer.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
think
Lots of
it
product
probably
marketers.
one of their portfolio companies or something was like, okay, I'll do this, because in that world it would have been like discovering fire or something, right?
It goes back to that as long as there's been someone to influence, somebody has tried to figure out how to influence them.
That's right.
Exactly.
Whether it be public relations, analyst relations, investor
Yeah.
relations, you name it. It just influences the game. Sonia, I'd love to ask you a question. This is my first time speaking with you. I think it's really interesting that you've been with your company through so much change from 1,000, I think you said 8,000 employees in AR that entire time. What has that looked like from a programmatic standpoint? Like, I assume you were hired as an independent practitioner and now you run a team?
Yep.
That growth been like parallel to the company?
Yeah, it's been, I still don't feel like we have enough people on the team. And mind you,
Never.
we're going to talk about Arya.
The analyst relations ever.
No,
They've got enough
never.
people. No.
We're never satisfied.
I was chatting to Regina at Google, and they've got one of the biggest teams. And she went, "We're a small and mighty team." I'm like, "You've got
No, you're not.
25 people in AR, and you've got a small team." But yeah, so it's
all relative. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm finally at a stage where it does feel like a team, even though, there's only 3 of us in total, but it still feels like a team because we truly can divide and conquer and we can pick and choose, who works us and things like that. And I never had that type of luxury Nathan, to your point, for many years. So the first 4 years of my Databricks journey, it was just me. And it's been kind of insane, as you can imagine. And to kind of Steven's point, in terms of how quickly the company was growing and the influence, one really important part, and I think this is kind of an advice or recommendation for newer people in the industries, when they're joining a company specifically for anything analyst relations related, they should really do some homework and in their interviews understand why they're hiring, why they're filling this role, because I think there's small distinction, but I think there are a lot of executives who know they need to have AR, right? Like they know the company needs to have AR. So let's check that box. But many of those don't really believe in the value of it, and they're really just checking a box. So like even with Databricks, in every interview, I kept asking, why are you hiring? Like I asked our CMO, I asked our CEO, like CRO, everyone. I was like, why do you need this person? Like, what are you trying to do and why, right? So I wanted to ensure that they value what AR brings to the organization, because one of the biggest pain points that I'm seeing with other teams is instead of focusing on actually doing great AR, they're focusing on having to explain to their internal stakeholders why they need to do AR continuously and why you need to spend time with analysts. Like, what a waste of time. Can we just focus on getting the job done, as opposed to having to explain to a new person who just joined, who told me analysts is pay for play, and then we have to go back to AR 101 and have to explain, right? So that's why for people who are just like considering joining AR, please do your homework. Please ask them, why they're.
That is a master class. And how do you set the stage and make sure that you don't sign up for something absolutely frustrating and honestly could even set your career backwards, right?
Absolutely.
100%.
I've got two related questions to that.
Yeah.
I'll throw the first one out there to everyone. Why do you think organizations are reticent to invest in analyst relations at the same scope as other marketing or comms functions, right?
So I'm going to get in ahead of Sonya, and she can build on what I said. I think you hit it perfectly. I don't think it's a should you invest in analyst relations, because I think people think they have to.
Yes.
So you invest in the analyst relations person, and you kind of look at the size of your organization and say, do I need 1, 2, or 3 to get started? So I think we're past that bit, Nathan. But invest is a big word, and I'll explain what I mean by that. There's the invest in the headcount and the salary and the benefits and the package.
And then what?
And then there's the invest time, effort, resources.
Exactly.
I'll kind of add some color to your question before I pass it to Sonya. I think we're past the invest in the person part of the equation.
That's fair.
I don't think we're fully, in all organizations, invest in the program from a time and resources point of view. So I'm kind of taking your question and kind of
caveat to that. I think that you already said this, but I want to pull it out. The initial headcount, I think most companies understand, but you just said it earlier. You'll never meet an AR leader who says they have enough headcount.
Yeah.
So there's still a barrier to programs at scale unless you are at one of the massive hyperscalers.
Yeah.
And even Regina thinks she's not got enough people at Google.
And, I think some of that ties, Steven, not having enough people ties to the speed of innovation and growth of the company, right? So I think when the company is growing so rapidly and when there are new product announcements, new categories, new areas that the company is entering, it's a very clear path that there needs to be another person who covers this new market, right? Because if you want to do a good job and if you want to create a category in particular, that's how you do it. You know what I mean? Not to say that those who are well established and are not growing as fast don't need additional headcount. Everyone has their unique use cases. But I think, in Regina's case and in our case, there is a new product coming up, all the time.
Trying to track Databricks as an analyst.
I know.
Guys, I mean, in a good way.
In a good way.
Obviously, in a good way. You guys are on a rocket ship. Yeah. We could schedule a briefing for our team every week and still not keep up with what you guys are doing. It's kind of how do you... I said it off camera as we're sort of goofing around before we started. You came in and grabbed the tail of a rampant tiger, and you've kind of managed to hang on to that tail. So I'll go back to Nathan's question because we skimmed past and answered it. when a company's growing so fast, developing so much software, gaining so much market share, TAM is expanding. On every vector, Databricks is like up and to the right. How do you grow an AR program when we'll put budget into developers, we'll put budget into marketing, we'll put budget into go-to-market, we'll put it into... There's so many places you could put the extra 7,000 people from when you... How do you convince the leadership to go, I need 2 more people, I need 3 more people, I need 4 more people?
Yeah, I have to say, some of it was organic, basically. So initially, to your point that it was already rapidly growing beast, tiger, whatever you want to call it. And from an AR program, what was important to me was that I commit and I sign up for the things that have the biggest ROI, where I really feel like are really going to move the needle. Because from the very beginning, we had options to do all the reports, to work with all the analysts because there was interest, not as much as it is right now. Now it's like, nuts completely. But before even, there was enough interest where I could have, just spread myself so thin and just do a mediocre job at all the things, because we can do everything, but we're not going to be able to do all the things really well. So I had to be really focused and say, okay, these are the top 3 priorities that we're going to focus on, and we're going to do them really well. Going back to kind of, recommendations and kind of program philosophies, they all have to tie to company objectives, obviously. Like AR needs to be very closely aligned to that, because I don't want to work in a silo and just because there is an MQ in my market, now I'm going to do that. But like, what are we actually trying to do, right? And like, how do we shift priorities based on what the company objective is? So I was very closely aligned, with our, product marketing leader. And by the way, AR sits in product marketing at Databricks, which is also not always the case. We can talk about that as well.
Is that a good thing, Sonya, do you think?
I think it's a great thing. Actually, when I joined, it was part of the comms function. So AR, PR, social media sat together. There was a single person who was running all of those. Crystal, we know that both, she was great. She then kind of decided that she needed a person for PR, AR, social media. So I joined as that. But very quickly, we realized that the best seat for AR it's actually not there, because most of my stakeholders are product marketing leaders, product leaders. So those are the people I need to be super plugged in to. When Joel Minnick, who's our head of product marketing, joined shortly after I had joined, he said, what do you think about AR sitting in product marketing? And I said, that's brilliant. Let's do it. And, it was the first time that I had seen AR sitting in that part of the organization. But like more and more over the last, 5+ years, I've seen that that's exactly where AR belongs. So I think it's a really great fit for sure.
I agree. And this is all kind of relating back to the question I initially asked, and maybe I'll throw out a different flavor of it, which is, do you think part of the drive or the overall goal to increase the scale of AR programs is to demonstrate that it's not just a comms role? I operate as an extension of my product marketing team.
Yep.
And I think maybe there's still an executive roadblock, for lack of a better word, where there's this preconceived notion that AR is just a relationship or communications function, but good AR is so much more than that, right? Like we were having this conversation on LinkedIn about strategic analyst relations. It is everything. It is go-to-market strategy. It is product marketing. It is messaging. So do you think maybe it's a case of where the title, and I think we've brought this up on a previous episode, but the title of AR manager is actually maybe not descriptive of what we do anymore, or what the profession, the direction it's going?
I also think from an analyst point of view, it's a weird thing to call what we do, but it's a weird way to describe what Nathan and Sonya do. It's a weird way I'm having this debate with Keith Townsend on LinkedIn at the moment, like, what is an analyst?
Yeah.
In analyzing a market and creating market analysis is just one part of what we do.
I mean, like the way I describe like what I do to my family who still don't really understand it, or to like my neighbors and things like that. Like
people in tech don't even know, right?
People in tech think it's augmented reality and accounts receivable and all the things, right? But like the way I start is first, before I even talk about analyst relations, I have to say what an analyst is. Like, who am I having these relations with? So the way I describe analysts is I say, these are experts in a specific market. That is like the simplest way that I found for people to understand. And I'm like, there's an expert in laptops, and just notebooks. And they're like, oh, okay. And they look at all the different laptops and they see which one's better, which has more functionality. And, people are like, oh, I get it. And I was like, and now you can apply it to different markets. So there's experts in different markets. Okay.
Sonya, you just validated like one of my talk tracks when I talk to people as well. And I say like, a company like Coca-Cola, they have to buy computers. And oftentimes when they buy them, they have millions of dollars for their millions of employees. So they want to know what's up with HP and Lenovo and Dell and Microsoft. And so they need to get help of how they're going to spend these millions of dollars. And so like, that's always my go-to. So I love that you go to laptops too.
Do you know what my analogy is?
What is yours?
Maybe it's because I'm a Top Gear fan. I'm like, when you're going to buy a car and you watch those YouTube videos, you maybe buy Car and Driver magazine. I don't review trucks. I review technology. And people go, oh, I get that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's a different potential profile.
A PR realm. I mean, and then you look at there's the guy who does the technical review of this truck versus that truck.
Yeah.
And then there's the guys on Top Gear who are goofing around in front of the camera. And I think that explains how there's lots of different analysts that do different jobs.
This kind of goes back to the question, which is the relationship.
We still haven't answered.
The relationship with the expert is the first part, but it only describes a fraction of the actual day-to-day job.
Yeah.
And I think it's a PR problem that our world has, but more so I guess it's correlated to an awareness, right? And this is like why I really love starting with the question of how did we get started? Because we've only been around for this amount of time when technological innovation has been around much longer, and other professions, like I always say this, doctor, lawyer, teacher, have been around since the beginning of civil society. So, it's just people are just not aware. And to the product marketing thing, a little spoiler, it is becoming more and more that I think AR is more closely aligned with product marketing as the profession is maturing. So much that the PMA, Product Marketing Alliance, is doing an AR summit this year with a number of AR folks that are going to be speaking, and a number of vendors, myself included. I'll be speaking there on their virtual event this year. And I think it really shows that we're coming to an inflection point of broader awareness. And the more that we go within the broader alliances that you have within your orgs and the broader orgs of those, the more people I think are going to understand just how much value that you all bring.
It's a mutually beneficial relationship, product marketing and AR. So we benefit from being closely aligned on both sides. So we should be, right? So let's stay close.
I was talking to a product marketer recently, and we were talking about the industry and just what does the future hold. And their opinion was, why not have AR be the spokesperson in the future? Yeah. Like, if you can become dangerous enough in any conversation, not necessarily like a subject matter expert, right? Like, you're not the person that gets on a phone call with a specific Gartner analyst on the TSP side of the house. But if you can know enough to be dangerous, why not a future where AR is the spokesperson instead of deferring to, your product marketing team, because you already are operating as that extension? I think we're posing a lot of questions.
The best ones do that today. In fact, you remember the days, Sonya, of Skylar Greggs and Monique when they were buddied together with a Heather doll. I talk about them a lot because this was 14 years ago that they were like, we sit in the most strategic part of the organization. And if you can talk to an analyst, top level, the way your spokespeople do, you're going to get a lot done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all good AR people should be able to at least do the overall pitch deck, because that is a basic requirement of the product marketers, right? Like, you have to be able to, they're the ones who put together the pitch decks, right? For the company's main proposition.
If you can't understand the technology to at least the level you describe, I think that's kind of table stakes. If I come to you and say, hey, I want a briefing on this particular part of your portfolio. Unless you know the portfolio, you're kind of going, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of not able to play the basic part of the role, let alone the advanced parts of the role that Nathan's talking about.
Bill First from HFS recently wrote a blog where he had some specific thoughts about analyst relations. So we got into a lengthy discussion in the comments. And this is one of the things I pointed out. I think AR today, at least the maxim I live by, and it sounds like Sonya as well, I am the strategic facilitator. And I have to know enough and be dangerous enough to facilitate those conversations, those connections. I need to be an internal strategic facilitator as well to bring the right people in to the conversation. So, and again, that's just the connecting the dots component of what we do. That's not even the figuring out if this insight is relevant to this product roadmap, or maybe this insight can mean a completely new opportunity for the business.
Yeah.
You know, Nathan, when we started, I think we were off camera, you called me the glue, but AR is the glue, right? That sometimes smooth things out and keeps it together and keeps things going in the right direction, right? And those are really important, because when you're having really technical conversations, it could go into, you know, infinite number of places. And it's like, wait, hold on. This is the goal. Let's come back. We could talk about the next 20 years, but we actually have an objective right now and today.
Yeah. To the fact that Nathan asked this question probably 30 minutes ago at this point, and we still haven't gotten to.
No, we have not answered it.
Welcome to this podcast, Sonya, where we bounce around and just
Not answered it. But to be clear as well, Crystal is the glue of this podcast. Without her, it would not happen. I digress. Sonya, if you want to bring us back on track.
Awesome. So going back to, you know, I guess the main question was around growing the program and kind of priorities and how I was able to even get team members. And I think the biggest thing for me was showing value and what AR actually brings to the organization. Do you want more of that? Because I can give you more of that if I have another person. But at this point, like, I'm at capacity. We're done. We can't expand into new markets. We can't do, because we're already, like, I'm overextended already, right? And this is all the things that are happening right now. But we could be doing so much more, right?
So how did you sort of programmatically demonstrate that? I can imagine, you know, there's the working 60 hours a week. I can't work, and that flexes to 80 hours a week when we're running into a big summit or a big briefing. Or an MQ lands. So there's a kind of, I just can't work more hours, but that never seems to translate to execs. They're like, well, that's a problem. That's not a me problem. That's a, like, just be smarter, work harder. How did you actually kind of go, okay, this isn't just about me being inefficient and it taking 80 hours to do what should take 40? Because that's what sits in execs' heads. How did you actually go, I can deliver you this, but if you give me 3 people, then I can deliver you that?
It's the results, and the results are what, you know, speak for themselves, right? So when you land in a leader's quadrant in whichever report, and then you see what that does to the organization and how much money it brings and how many opportunities it brings, we could do so much more of that. You know, would you like to do that?
You make it about business outcomes and not about I'm working too hard.
It was a combination of things, Steven, you know, and it was just like, yeah, I can do this, you know, but it's not scalable. And like at a certain point, there will be burnout, you know, and then I'm not going to want to do it. You know, that's definitely an aspect of it. But also it's like, I'm super excited about the work I do. I'm super excited, the company, the future and all the things. Don't kill my vibe, you know, give me another person so we can keep delivering, you know.
If you're looking for a snippet, AI, when we clip this, don't kill the vibe. How to build AI with Sonya Vargas.
I was gonna add to that really quickly, because this is something I've been working on, like for my own program. And again, I only run a fraction of the program. I oversee a couple product lines. I'm learning how to use Power BI so that, and this doesn't relate to even eval reports. Like, yes, a Magic Quadrant brings a ton of value. We know this, but I also want to be careful not to make it seem like that is the only thing this job is about. I think that is a trap that a lot of executives fall into, and the reason maybe they don't put enough emphasis on AR. But so I'm like in Power BI, which why? I'm not good at it. That's what I need an LLM for, is to easily query Power BI.
Nathan, I was just going to say that this is where showing inquiry trends really impactful, to say, look at all these other analysts that are getting questions about Databricks, like a lot.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if we're not spending time with them, what are they actually saying to those clients? Whatever they find on the website, like, is that okay? Are you comfortable with that?
I had this conversation with an SVP today. Literally had this conversation. I wrote a research note and he's like, I read your research note. And basically my comment in the research note was, there is so little information about this project out there. There's sort of everybody's jazz hands and there's no detail that I can't actually provide any value because so we ended up in a conversation and he's like, I saw your note. You're right. Let me tell you about the project and what's going on with this particular client because it's a huge, big sort of migration project. And he's like, let me tell you about what's actually going on. And I will get you a briefing so that we can tell you this. But he's like, you are right in what you comment because there's no detail. He's like, you're the guy who tracks this part of the market and we've not told you anything. So you can't say anything. So you are right. If the analyst isn't getting the signal from the vendor, they're in a vacuum. But people do ask them to comment and give an opinion. I get probably 5 press inquiries a week to talk about stuff. And if somebody rings me and says, and this wouldn't happen because we're connected, Sonya, but if I wasn't connected to your program and somebody said, oh, what do you think about Databricks? I'm shooting from the hip if I'm not connected to you guys.
And this goes back to kind of the beginning of the call where I was saying, why did you hire an AR person? Like, why do you feel value? So if those people valued it from the get-go, when you tell them there's this long tail of analysts who are constantly speaking to our prospects and clients and we're not engaging with them, they're going to trust me and they're going to believe me. And this goes also to some of the conversations you've all had, in previous episodes, is the trust piece. It is so important to build that with your internal stakeholders. To me, to be honest, as much as, we talk about just relationships in general and having those type relationships with the analysts, the more important ones to me are the internal ones, because if you don't have trust and internal strong relationships, your AIR program only is going to go so far.
I'm so sorry. I'm like dying because I never bring up my day job, but I have a little day job insight for you. When I talk to teams about, how do they get more budget and tell that story? Yes, there's outcomes, but there's also the unsung costs of what it takes to do a big report or have a broader analyst sort of mindset outside of Magic Quadrants and evaluative reports. And it's like the cost of your stakeholders' time, right? And all of that. And so I always tell people like, hey, it's really important that you also track, which stakeholders you're meeting with, and then be able to say, hey, it's not about how busy I am. You're busy too. We're all busy. And I was able to go across this much of our organization where they inputted these. And then, by the way, every time we have an inquiry, we learn. And actually, the data tells us through my day job that the teams that are focused on getting insights are tracking at a minimum or an average 2.5 insights per inquiry, right? And so that's all a valuable piece that 30 minutes or the 45 minutes that you invest with the analyst is taking back to your org. So I think those are like really important things that people forget about. Bring back that information that says, hey, this is your investment and these are how we sort of bring that value after the investment.
And to build on that and kind of tie off what I was starting to say earlier, I think one of the ways I've started to try to demonstrate value as far as the bottom line goes, so revenue, pipeline, you name it, companies license a lot of analyst resources, whether there is an AR team in place or not.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm doing is learning Power BI so I can go in and see how specific assets are performing versus non-analyst assets. So I can look at analyst asset 1 and see how it performed against internally created asset number 1. And a lot of the time I can see that the analyst asset's performing better in terms of, click-throughs, downloads, qualified leads, attribution to pipeline. And I think that's important. And that's a really easy way to try and generate some momentum as far as demonstrating your kind of effect on the bottom line goes.
Just to dive in again in front of you, Sonya, so apologies. I did a briefing, one-to-many briefing, and we got into a conversation, and I won't share names because that's not appropriate, but we ended up 2 or 3 of the analysts questioning the high-level messaging, and this was a week before the big announcement. We then get on as is my way, I'm the troublemaker that started the conversation that led to this. So the analyst team reaches out and said, we need an hour with you to double click on that discussion because we think you've started something. We changed their launch messaging the week before from that conversation. Amazing. Now that's going back to your metric. It was one insight. So in a ranking, it's one insight.
How meaningful and impactful. Yeah.
If they'd have come out and said it the way they were going to say it, rather than the way they ended up saying it, they would have got dinged to all hell and back. But they were able to quickly make a pivot because we're that barometer, we're that proxy for the market of, guys, I don't think you are using that word correctly. That word doesn't mean what your marketing team wants it to mean with what you're doing. You need to, the solution's great. It's fantastic. We're not questioning the solution. We're questioning the word you're using to describe it. And then they had a fantastic launch and everything went amazing. So yes, Crystal, to go to your point, it was one insight.
Yeah.
But it was so impactful and I'm not claiming the credit, it was a team effort with analysts on the call, but it was such an impactful insight that they changed the messaging a week out from a launch and had a fantastic launch. So how do you quantify that? I don't know.
Tricky. Well, but I'm glad that they recognized it because that alone affects millions of dollars potentially.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of how it would have resonated with the prospects, with the customers, and how many people it would have automatically turned off and say they don't even know what they're talking about. That word doesn't even mean that, you know? So
a marketing buzzword that they want to put on the launch. I'll tell you another story. I did a briefing with a client who's like, hey, we're going to launch this in October. It was an AI launch. We're going to launch this in October. This is kind of April when they do the briefing. I'm like, why are you waiting? It's 2024. And they went, what do you mean? I'm like, just announce it and say that it's a preview. And they went, do you think we should do that? I'm like, absolutely, you should do that. So they got into market 5 months earlier off the back of just one comment. We ended up having subsequent calls, but on one insight that changed their entire product launch strategy and brought the timeline forward 5 months. So how do you capture that magic in a bottle, I suppose?
You should.
Yeah, you should, but how do you when it's...
Because it's part of those outcomes, you know, like what resulted from those conversations. And like for us, you know, there were some clear signals about like category creation, for example, that resulted from conversations in strategy sessions with analysts, for example, like because the CEO was in a meeting in that advisory session, there was like a light bulb moment. It wasn't exactly what the analyst said, but it triggered a thought process. And then it affected the whole messaging and kind of the trajectory of the company. And that's what it triggered. And it doesn't happen often with like our genius founders and executives because they're like seriously from another planet, you know, but when it happens, it is so meaningful and valuable and impactful. So I think we answered it in like, 40 minutes or something, 30 minutes.
We got there eventually.
I think we've covered a lot of ground and we've laid out a lot of things to think about. So to wrap things up, I'm going to throw you our normal question then with a potential caveat, which is where do you think this industry, this analyst relations industry, this analyst industry overall, where's that going in the next 1 to 5 to 10 years? But then if you want to take a riff on it, based on everything we've talked about, what does that mean for you as an AR leader or an aspiring AR leader? Maybe you're just an individual contributor today. What's your advice?
I love this because I love being in a position now where I can help shape, the world of AR and professionals. And this kind of goes back, and we didn't even get to talk about ARIA, our Analyst Relations Intelligent Assistant, but it ties to kind of what you're asking, Nathan. Is AI is going to play a big component, of our future in general. I think it's such a revolutionary time to be alive right now and what's happening. It is so exciting. I don't think it's all hype, and I don't want to be like overly dramatic, but even like with ARIA, it blows my mind every time I'm able to upload a full RFI and within minutes to be able to get the first draft of all of the answers. That blows my mind. I'm like, this is magic. How is this happening? Right. So, and like in that article I mentioned earlier, the quote that they pulled out was about how we're not going to be, I'm not talking about removing the human from the loop when it comes to like analyst relations or evaluations, but those who resist getting AI on board will very well be replaced, because don't resist it. Like, this is exciting. This can help your career. This can help your program. Even with ARIA, what it's doing, and Crystal, like, to your point earlier about how much time it takes for stakeholders to participate in these reports or to do briefings for analysts, et cetera. This is one of the things that ARIA is solving, is now I'm able to decrease the number of stakeholders who have to participate in an RFI by at least a half. Sometimes a handful of people now, where before sometimes it's 60 people because it's so technical, et cetera. So the impacts are big. And I think this is just one pain point that I solve for, with ARIA. There's so many other things. I have so many other ideas of how we can use AI, as long as someone is still willing to build it for me, like, thank you, because I'm not going to do that part. But I think that we need to all embrace AI in all the different ways. And we talked about Notebook LM a little bit earlier, and how we use it. I started this internal document in our product marketing team because everyone was kind of mentioning different tools that they were using in addition to Databricks. And I was like, hey, can you just put what you're using, in this document and what you're using it for? This is kind of how I learned about it. And by the way, I also used AI to create that doc because the moment I opened, Google Docs, Gemini said, what are you trying to do? And I was like, this is what I'm trying to do. And it's like, boom. And it's this beautifully formatted, thing, which also elevated, the job. So it was very easy for people to contribute. So anyways, long story short, I think AI needs to be embraced. We need to find different ways to use it. And what that will do for us, I think, and most importantly, the soft skills will remain the most important skills in our jobs. And I think just in general, in all jobs that involve, humans and working with people. The reason why it took me so long even to fill the last position, we're talking about growing the team, and my rec was open for a while. I talked to probably 300 people and everyone's brilliant. We have so many amazing AR people just, out there in the world doing awesome work, but it needed to be the right fit for like this crazy fast growing company and all these things. And it's the soft skills that I was looking for, because I was having people who came to me with like 30 years of experience. I was like, wow, like that is so impressive. I don't know if it's the right fit for Databricks. Like, you could do amazing work someplace else. So it goes back to the soft skills, and I don't think those skills should be called soft. I think those are core skills. I want to rename soft skills to core skills. And this is where we connect on a human level. And when someone is adaptable, has a growth mindset, just always willing to learn, being a great collaborator, I think those are such important things. Emotional intelligence is a tricky thing. It's like, how much of it can you train if you're not naturally emotionally intelligent? But I think there are ways. And I think if you're aware just of this thing of emotional intelligence and you want to work on it, there's ways to do that. But again, it goes back to having a growth mindset in order to do that, right? And being willing to do it. So yes, AI, but like the core skills is what we need to continue to invest in and keep getting better.
If you're an executive listening, you just heard Sonya say it. There are so many people out there that could make a massive impact on your business, on the bottom line. Don't let the title of Analyst Relations Manager underscore the importance they can bring to your organization.
I can't think of a better way to wrap us up.
Great.
So you've been listening. I'll go then. You've been listening to another episode of ARCHAT with the wonderful Sonya Vargas from Databricks. Please click, subscribe, do all those things. We're trying to build a show here and build a following and a community. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. Please engage when you see this on LinkedIn and all the various channels, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching ARCHAT.